It is my distinct honor to introduce our distinguished speaker, Senator Chris Murphy. Representing Connecticut in the United States Senate, Senator Murphy has dedicated his career to public service. He continues to be a strong voice in the Senate fighting for job creation, affordable health care, education, sensible gun laws, and forward-looking foreign policy, all in addition to his leadership as an advocate for Connecticut families. Senator Murphy, we are thrilled to have you with us today, and thank you so much for being here.
Well, Billy, thank you very much for having me here today. Thanks for being flexible. I know my colleague, Senator Smith, is due to come down a little bit later today. We are in the middle of a busy series of votes on the floor this afternoon, and so I'm thankful to allow me to slide in and say my piece and then be able to get up for our business on the Senate floor. But I'm so excited that you're here. I'm really looking forward to hearing the outcome of your discussions. Because I hope, as you know, there is a group of us in the Senate and the House who are taking this epidemic of loneliness, aloneness, disconnectedness more seriously than ever before. And it is so heartwarming to know that there are a lot of people in this country and in and around this town who have been taking this epidemic seriously for a lot longer than Congress has. Allowing us to really draw on your wisdom and your work. So why is this important to me? And I think I can speak for some of my colleagues who are increasingly focusing on this problem. Well, I think the Surgeon General has done just such a wonderful job of articulating what the health consequences of loneliness are. He came before the Health Committee just last week, and we had a very good discussion with him broadly about children's mental health, but inside that was a conversation about this epidemic of aloneness and loneliness amongst kids. And the physical health consequences of feeling lonely are pretty significant, right? 30% increased risk of heart disease, for instance, 50% increased risk of dementia amongst older adults. And so, whether or not you just think that there should be a rooting interest here in Washington in people feeling better, there's a fiscal cost when more people are feeling alone and lonely. We're just paying more bills when it comes to the Medicare and Medicaid program. But in a piece that I recently wrote called The Politics of Loneliness, I make the argument that there's a real political cost to ignoring this epidemic of loneliness. When you're feeling alone, when you're feeling disconnected from your peers, from your family, there's a lot of things that go on there. And I probably think every single person has had that feeling, maybe for short bursts of time, maybe for longer periods of time. Sadness is the first emotion that happens, but often that is accompanied by or followed by anger. Why did this happen to me? Why am I feeling this way? Especially if you're not alone, especially if you're feeling lonely and yet surrounded by people. And that anger over feeling disconnected, that can go a lot of different places, but one of the places that it goes is a search for attachment and meaning wherever you can find it. Unfortunately, demagogues prey upon people who are feeling angry, people who are feeling angry because they're feeling alone, people who are searching for meaning, attachment, and identity. And so I just don't think it's a coincidence that you have seen a rise in fringe politics in this country, a rise in the politics of conspiracy theory, a rise in political violence, as we have seen an increasing number of Americans reporting that they are feeling lonely. And so, to me, this is a health issue, this is a metaphysical issue, this is a political issue, but it's also embedded in this broader conversation that Americans are having with each other. Because for a lot of Americans, it just kind of feels like this country is falling apart a little bit, right? I mean, this idea that you're going to get shot at because you pull into the wrong driveway, the idea that people feel so dispossessed politically that they're going to storm the Capitol to try to return to power their favorite leader, the fact that 130 people are dying every day because they're taking a drug that is designed to numb their physical and emotional pain, right? That's not right. that I think is without historical precedent. And so Americans who are sort of searching for answers to this unraveling that they sense is happening in this country are going to be, I think, really attracted to a conversation that picks out as one of the problems that explains this unraveling, the loneliness of modern Americans. And so what do we do about this? Well, that's for you to answer, for you to tell us what your recommendations are. But clearly there are some pieces that we can all agree on. We've got to give people ways to find connection. They just don't have it as much any longer. There aren't as many healthy churches, so the clubs are drying up. Downtown, small businesses, the places where you used to find community and meet people, they don't exist any longer. We do all of our shopping on our phones. We've got to have a more purposeful policy, public policy, to try to incentivize meeting places, to try to provide people with easy opportunities to create that community. Now that gets into some strange, sometimes uncomfortable places, federal government supporting churches. But I don't know any other way around this unless you're talking about unraveling the entire post-neoliberal world order. So I think that's a place we have to talk about. Part of the reason that there aren't as many churches and there aren't as many kids participating in youth sports and there aren't as many social clubs is that people just have less free time. And so part of our strategy about attacking aloneness or loneliness has to be giving people the ability to sort of stretch their legs and leave work and be able to enjoy themselves in their community. More people now working weekends, working multiple jobs. And so this is not, an effort to try to shoehorn the loneliness agenda into a broader progressive economic message or agenda, but yeah, paying people more, allowing them to only have one job, allowing them to leave work at 5 o'clock and go join a church group in the evening. That's part of combating loneliness as well. And then, listen, I just don't think that there's any story here that doesn't involve talking about social media and our addiction to our screens. I hope some of you have learned about the variety of pieces of legislation that are being introduced right now in the Senate. A couple of weeks ago, Senator Schatz and I, along with Senator Cotton and Senator Britt, introduced probably the most sweeping reform of social media in the Senate today that is targeted towards kids on social media, but just creates some bright lines and says there's got to be age verification so that nobody under 13 is on social media, that you can't use these algorithm boosting techniques to addict kids to content. The parents have to have a say as to whether their minor is on social media. I understand the problem of loneliness is not simply about kids, but it is rising most quickly amongst young people. And once you become addicted to that screen as a young person, you're just much more likely to rely on it as an adult. And so I'm more convinced now than ever before that part of the solution here in attacking loneliness is a regulation of a product that is making us alone. And I think kids today are really worryingly blind to how addicted they've become. I recently convened a conversation of high schoolers in Connecticut to talk about this bill, and they were interestingly so defensive about the algorithm specifically, because one of the things this bill would take away is the use of that algorithm to feed you perfecting content, followed by perfecting content. And they really couldn't imagine a world in which they had to work to find entertainment or connection or content that is fulfilling to them. They were very clearly so reliant on this machine to just spoon feed them stuff on a conveyor belt. And part of the ritual of being a kid or an adolescent is the ritual of discovery, of exploration, of finding what you like and what you don't like. And so much of that is collaborative. So much of that ritual relies on you having actual conversations and relationships with other people who are in that same exploration as you are. And if you withdraw from that exploration and you just rely on the smartphone to tell you what you like, well, then that is part of what leads to this massive withdrawal of our kids from connection. Why I think that the regulation of the smartphone and the social media is so important. The last thing to say is this, and then I'll leave you to your discussion and forward to the outcome of your talk. There is also this very understandable broad dissatisfaction with the state of our politics, right? It just was more polarized and more angry, more shouty than ever before, and that's all right. Notwithstanding the fact we've actually passed a lot of pretty good bipartisan stuff here in the past few years, but there's no question that the entire American political conversation is not functional enough. I think that this kind of effort, stepping back from specific policies and having a conversation about the things we feel, is a really interesting way to turn down the heat on the American political discourse. Because as you all know, if you have a conversation about the things you feel, we will find out pretty quickly that people on the right and the left are feeling a lot of the same things. They are feeling run over by technology. They are feeling disconnected. They are feeling a harder time searching out and finding that meaning and identity, at least in positive places. And this conversation about disconnectedness, I just think is really important for health reasons, for political reasons, but I think it's also a really great exercise in bringing people together that right now feel very separated by each other, because there are a lot of lonely people who want Trump to go to jail, and there are a lot of lonely people who want him to be president again. And if they could have a conversation just about the stuff that I talked about, regulating social media, more free time, less work, more healthy places to find community, they would figure out pretty quickly that they agree on a lot of that stuff. So the work that you're engaging in, I think is important for all of those reasons. And I was so excited to get an invitation to come down and talk with you. There's a lot of conversation happening amongst my colleagues. Tina and I have been talking about this a lot. I just got a text this morning from another friend in the House of Representatives who said, I saw you're working on something on the loneliness agenda. How can I get involved? So your being here, your commitment to working with members of Congress, I think it comes at the absolutely perfect time. And I can't wait to hear the outcome of your meeting here this week. So thank you very much for having me. Great.